All right. So thank you guys for coming today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sorry that we're still talking about this, but I will try to make this as painless as possible. So go ahead and get started. Screen, there we go. All right. So are you guys able to still see this slide okay? I have the name boxes fully exposed, so I don't know if that's blocking anybody's view. So if it is, please just unmute and tell me. I can try to make it a little bit smaller. So I just see one person. I don't know if that's better. So let me know if you have any visual problems of actually seeing the presentation. It might be harder if you're on your phone, but I can't do much about that. So, all right. So welcome. My name is Melissa Tompkins Lewis, and I am going to be talking today about the world's best subjects, COVID and Cal OSHA combined. I know all of you are super excited to listen to me talk about this very complicated topic that we've been going on for 3 years now. But hopefully, this is my last one. This is my 4th webinar on Cal OSHA and COVID, and I'm hoping to never do another one. So let's cross our fingers and hope for the best. Okay, so a little bit about me, because I know not all of you know who I am. I've been in this field for 20 years this year. I am a veterinary management consultant. I am still by trade a veterinary practice manager. I am a certified veterinary practice manager. I'm also a PHR California, which is an HR certification for the state of California. We are the only state in the entire country that has this designation because we have such complicated laws. I am also a certified compassion fatigue professional as well. I wish I had a veterinary one, but they just have the regular one. I have written lots of fun articles and things like that, published a few different times. I'm active in speaking. I'm excited. I'm speaking at Western later this month. So if you're going to WVC, please come check out my sessions. I will be there, as will be Leslie Boudreau. She's also another OC manager from Huntington Beach. So we've got some representation there. It's really exciting. I am also, really happy to be talking to all of you guys right now. And I am the owner of South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions, which is my management consulting company. And one thing I do love to do, and I'll put the big pic tile back on, because I love to do a selfie picture. And I know it's stupid because we're all on Zoom, but hopefully this is going to be my last Cal OSHA webinar ever, right? So I'm going to stop my share really quick. And I would love it if everybody can come on camera. If you can come on camera, I'm going to take a picture of all these wonderful faces and celebrate. Please, I'm crossing my fingers. I don't want to jinx us, but I'm really crossing my fingers that this is the last webinar ever on Cal OSHA, unless things change next month. So we're going to all cross our fingers. I'd love to get a picture of everybody. So if you can take your camera off, if you're able to, I'm going to do a quick picture. If you don't have a camera, no big deal. Your name will be on there. I have 2 screens now, so I'll have to take a couple of pictures, but please feel free. I'm going to wait 5 more seconds and then we'll do a quick picture if you can. If not, no big deal. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile if you can. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to do another one because I got to go to the second screen. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you guys so much for allowing me to take your picture. You're welcome to go off camera now. You do not have to stay on. All right, so let me go back. Okay. And I'll make this smaller really quick. There we go. Okay, so I have a legal disclaimer, and I literally am going to read this to you. All the information presented in this webinar is gathered from a variety of sources, all of which I have cited. There's a reference list at the end of the presentation. Please refer to these sources when making changes and decisions with your practice. My intent with this webinar is to inform you of the changes and the resources available at this time to the best of my ability. Any opinions are shared within this presentation are mine and are not to be construed as legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. If you have legal questions, you need to seek the advice of an attorney. By watching the rest of this webinar, you are agreeing to this information. So please, I just want to make my legal disclaimer for all of you. Okay, so I wanted to thank Rhonda and Linda of Dog Days Consulting. They are helping me sponsor this webinar today. Linda is our moderator who has been letting everybody in. Linda, if you want to go off screen really quick, if everyone can see your smile, just wave so everyone can see you if they're able to. And she is going to be helping me by answering questions in the chat. And if there's something urgent, she'll shout out to me. Otherwise, she'll gather your questions and we'll answer them kind of at the end of the presentation. Hopefully, I'll answer some of them as we go along, but she will be the one helping with all of that kind of stuff. So please feel free to put in the chat communication or questions. I don't care. I love interaction within chats, even if I'm not reading it, because I think it's a fun, almost in-person kind of thing. So thank you again, Dog Days Consulting, Linda and Rhonda. All right, so a couple common questions that I'll just let you guys know now is that this presentation is being recorded, as most of you would have known, since you would have had to click on it to approve it. And it's going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is under South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions. And my little symbol thing is at South Coast Veterinary Manage 263. I didn't pick it. They just assigned that to me, so it's fine. If you like or subscribe my channel, you also get other management videos. I have done several over the past 2 years that you're welcome to go and watch if you are interested. So please know that that's where I'll be uploading the presentation to. Everyone who has registered for this meeting, whether you're able to attend live or not, or whether you have to leave early, doesn't matter. I'm going to email everyone a copy of the presentation or the video, as well as a copy of the slides. So you guys will all get that. And then of course, any resources that I cite will be in there as well. Okay, so, and I checked this actually at 9:30. So this information right here, where it says facts, frequently asked questions, coming soon. COVID-19 model program, coming soon. That is literally 9:30 on the Cal OSHA website that I just checked. So hopefully it doesn't change in the middle of the presentation, but as of right now, it's not there. It's not available for you to read. It does say at the bottom of that, though, the resources, and it has the COVID-19 prevention emergency temporary standards, which is what we all been looking at over the past 3 years. That says it expires January 23, but it does not have the updated ones as of 9:30 this morning. So I'm going to go over information with you based on what I have existing to me now. I will check that Cal OSHA updates every single day. If I see something that differs from what I've told you, I will 100% email everybody so you guys will know, because I don't want to say something that's incorrect later. I will definitely be checking that. So just feel comfortable that I will get that to you as soon as possible. Hopefully everything that they've told us that I'm going to talk about is still remaining true. I just can't see it in proof yet. So one thing I do know is that they did put in December a little template informational thing that said, these are the things we're going to be looking at that they're going to be doing. And it said, if approved, it will remain in effect for 2 years from January of this year until December of 2024. Any record keeping obligations that you guys have to save records about any outbreaks or any cases or things like that have to be maintained for 3 years. So through the end or the beginning or middle, I guess, of December of 2025. And this was adopted by Cal OSHA on December 15th, 2022, but it still has to be voted on and approved and then put on their website to say it's true. So that little link you guys will get in the PDF, you'll also have it at the end. That is where that information comes from. And just kind of a note, the regulations that I'm going to talk about are going to apply to us in veterinary medicine, but there are different regulations for anyone who's covered under the aerosol transmission disease standards. So if you work at a human hospital or other types of facilities, it may be different for them, but it's not different for us. What I'm going to talk about is specific to our type of business. We're not an exception. We're no longer aerosol. Well, we never were aerosol, but we're no longer, the medical side of things as far as the Cal OSHA rules. Okay, so let's take a quick peek. So major changes in the removal of the ETS. Employers are no longer required to maintain a standalone COVID-19 prevention plan. So I don't know if you did this. You were required as of November of 2020 to put together a model plan for Cal OSHA. So you had to put in writing. They actually had a template on the Cal OSHA website. You had to create a COVID plan based on the whole guidance that they gave of what to do it in all these different situations. And you were supposed to put that in writing in November of 2020. So if you never did it, well, it's not required anymore, although they might check if you were inspected, they might ask you to see both. I'm not sure, I can't guarantee that. But you're no longer required to create a standalone plan or maintain a standalone plan. What you can do is you can type up your COVID information and put it in your IIPP plan. And they will have a model of the new version of the written plan updated sometime soon, hopefully sooner rather than later, but you don't have to have it as a whole separate thing, because it used to be, it had to be a separate document. It was kind of a little bit complicated. If you don't have a written IIPP plan and you have more than 10 employees, please email me and I will send you links on how you can create that, because the injury and illness prevention plan is required by OSHA for all companies, and it's required in writing for any company who has more than 10 employees. So if you do not have that in writing, email me and I'll send you some links of how you can create that. It's not, I mean, it's tedious, but once you did it, it's done. So it's pretty easy. Okay. So these are the things that are going to be, well, that were listed in December that were going to be like the items that will need to be on your COVID prevention plan that you're going to be, making if you haven't done that yet. These are the requirements that they're going to say you're talking about. You're going to have to provide effective COVID-19 hazard prevention training to employees. Okay, so you still are going to have to do that. You're going to have to provide face coverings when required by the California Department of Public Health and provide respirators upon request. Respirators are just the N95 masks typically, so you should be fine. It's not a separate thing. You can do that. Identify COVID-19 health hazards and develop methods to prevent transmission in the workplace. That is part of that plan. You have to investigate and respond to COVID-19 cases and certain employees after close contact. So you are still required to investigate those situations and respond to them, meaning that you have to have them quarantined. As of now, the quarantine rule is still there. So I'm going to say that, but that is something that could change. But you have to do other things with it. And I'll talk about that in a second. So you're still required to track those things, okay? You are required to make testing available to no cost to employees, including to all employees that are exposed at work. So if you have a major outbreak, I'm sorry, you have to give people testing. That's still required. So you have to investigate. That's where you have to kind of respond because you have to test everybody or whatever you need to do. You have to notify anybody who's affected by COVID-19 cases in the workplace still. So you'll have to track it, you'll have to test them, and you'll have to notify everybody who was potentially exposed. You have to maintain these records. These are the records that will be maintained for 3 years, so up till December of 2025, unless they extended it. So you'll have to track all of those things. If you have not been tracking it, please go back and track. Go back and remember who was this and who was that, because you're going to need to show that if they ask you. Hopefully you're not inspected, but it's a just in case kind of situation. So these are the things that were said in the Cal OSHA's PDF document that they had talking about what you were going to have to put into your plan. That could change since they haven't updated it yet, but hopefully this will be the gist of it. Okay, so additional information. Employers must exclude COVID-19 cases from the workplace until they are no longer an infection risk and implement policies to prevent transmission after close contact. I'm going to talk about quarantine in a little bit, so I'm not going to talk about it now. But you did one thing that was told to me when I was in a webinar on Tuesday by Cozen O'Connor Law Firm. The lady did say, and I haven't seen that in writing, but she said that you do not have to screen employees daily for COVID. And I would say the exception is for your COVID positive employees, of course, but you do not, if you've been taking temperatures, you can stop. If you've been tracking people, like clicking on something and saying that they're not, they don't have a fever or whatever, all the things you may have been doing, you can stop doing that per the lady that spoke on Tuesday, the attorney that was in that webinar. But I didn't see that in writing yet. But I'm throwing this out there and letting you guys know, but maybe wait until we see something from Cal OSHA that's actually published on their site, since it's not quite there. One thing that you do have to be aware of that did not change is the ventilation requirements. I know some hospitals did do a lot of things with this and some of them may not have, but your employers are required to review the Cal OSHA guidance on ventilation. What's required for ventilation and air quality in indoor environments. You're required to look at that, review what you have currently and see if you need to change it. I am not going to go into the ventilation information at all in my talk, but there is a link to it through the Cal OSHA site, which you'll get the link from me, that if you haven't done that yet, you need to, because it is still required as part of the long-term 3-year plan. So definitely be aware of that. Okay, so major changes, in addition to not having to have the separate model plan, is you now report major outbreaks only, and you report them to Cal OSHA instead of public health. And a major outbreak is 20 or more COVID positive employees within a 14-day period of time. So hopefully, most of us will not be dealing with this anymore, because hopefully we're not going to have 20 sick employees all at the same time coming down with COVID. I'm going to cross my fingers. Some of you don't even have 20 employees, so this is not even going to be a thing for you at all. For those of you who do, you just have to, they have to test positive all within that 14-day period of time, and that's when you have to report it. Otherwise, we are off the hook with having to report COVID positive cases to your public health department. One thing there was a little caveat about is to remind everybody that you still have to report to Cal OSHA any other serious things like employee deaths, injuries, other illnesses, and things that may not have to do with COVID. They just wanted to remind everybody that's still there. My most exciting thing, and I told, I think Linda and Sarah too, that I might do a little dance. So I'm going to do my little dance because we do not have to pay exclusion pay anymore. You guys, this is amazing. So as of January 1st, as long as they say it and when it's actually published. But in the template that they gave us, it says no more exclusion pay. It literally says this: the COVID-19 prevention regulations do not require employers to pay employees while they're excluded from work. Instead, the regulations require employers to provide employees with information regarding COVID-19 related benefits they may be entitled to under federal, state, local laws, and your leave policy you have, your sick time, all those kinds of things. So we are no longer required to do this separate exclusion pay. Now, because this has not been officially signed off on, even though they published it in December, they haven't published their official ruling yet. I'm on the fence of whether I would tell you that if you had somebody right now today that might be eligible for exclusion pay, I almost want to tell you you should do it as a precaution just in case something changes. Because unfortunately, unlike the retroactive leave pay when they made it retroactive last year, getting your money back from your employee is not going to be retroactive. So just be aware of that. But if you don't pay it and they change it, you're going to have to retro it back. So whatever you decide, I'm just letting you know. You can decide not to do it now based on what they've told us, or you can just, be cautious and still do it. So it's up to you. Okay, so close contact was revised, and you guys may be aware of this because this happened, I think, in November or something like that. So they revised the actual definition of it. It's based on the size of the workplace instead of just whether they had a face covering or the spacing between individual people. So there's basically three types of what is now considered a close contact. So close contact for an indoor space of 400,000 or less cubic feet per floor is sharing that space. So I put this picture here because I feel like even if you're within you're way 15 feet apart, because this looks like a pretty good sized room, it's still smaller than 400,000 cubic feet. So if you were in this room working with someone else for a 15-minute period of time, then that's considered a close contact. So it's not the 6 feet or more with what it's under 400,000 square feet in an indoor space. So just to kind of clarify that with you guys. Now, close contact of more than 400,000 cubic feet of square feet, or cubic feet per floor, a close contact is now back to that 6 feet because there's a lot more space than obviously 400,000 or like a 600,000 square foot building. So you have to then be closer to that person for that 15 minutes of time. So if you run into someone for 30 seconds and then walk off, you're no longer considered a close contact in the over 400,000 cubic feet of space. So just to kind of clarify that with you guys. And then the last piece is they've changed too that offices, suites, and rooms, waiting areas, break or eating areas, bathrooms, or spaces that are separated by floor to ceiling walls are considered distinct indoor spaces. So the difference is anybody in that office is going to have, yes, you're going to be more direct contact, but if you're outside of that, so if you never go into your supervisor's office, like your practice owner's office or something like that, and they're in there with the door closed all day, you don't have to count them as a close contact if they would be positive with COVID. So they have clarified a little bit of that. Okay, now, I don't see any updated quarantine guidance. So the most recent quarantine guidance I could find as of 9:30 this morning was from November of this year, or I'm sorry, November of 2022. So I'm just going to read it. Most of you guys should know this by now. Anyone who tests positive for COVID, no matter vaccine status, they have to stay home for at least 5 days after the start of symptoms or after the first positive test if they didn't have symptoms. Isolation can end after day 5 if symptoms are not present and are resolving and a diagnostic specimen collected on day 5 or later tests negative, right? Those rules haven't changed as far as I can find. If they're not able to test or they won't test or whatever, then they have to stay out for up to the 10 days that we've talked about. If they come back to work early, they will have to wear a mask for that until that 10-day time is up. If they stay out the full 10 days, they don't have to wear a mask when they come back per California Department of Public Health. If they have symptoms are not resolving, or there's other things, they need to talk to their healthcare provider. So as far as I can tell, this rule has not changed as of, like I said, 9:30 this morning. Now, exposure for asymptomatic persons who are exposed to COVID-19, meaning they don't have any symptoms, they do not have to automatically quarantine. This didn't change also. They have to test. They say within 3 to 5 days of exposure. After exposure, I would say wait till day 5. I mean, you could test on day 3 if you're really worried, but I would test again on day 5 because sometimes day 3 is a lie and it tells you that you're negative and you're really not. So I would say maybe at least do 2 tests or test on day 5. So that's my recommendation, because I wouldn't trust if day 3 says you're negative. If it says you're positive, then you probably are, but if it says you're negative, you might want to test again. That's just my personal experience. But again, you guys choose whatever you want to do. But you do not have to quarantine automatically just because you're exposed. That's still been the rule. So none of that, that's all the same. Okay. So one thing that it's referenced in the PDF that Cal OSHA put out is the use of face coverings. And so if you go to basically Cal OSHA says, go to the CDPH guidance for the use of face masks. And this is what I found when you click on that link and you go into the CDPH guidance. It does say employees always have the right to wear face coverings at work and to request respirators from you. So if you don't have freaking cases of N95s, you need to get those, because they still have the right to ask you all the time when they're working indoors or if there's an outbreak. So you're still required to provide that for you. One thing I want to point out is the California Department of Public Health. This is the guidance for business venue operators or hosts. And this is the first sentence. It says, when CDC community levels are medium or high, businesses and venue operators or hosts should consider. It doesn't say you have to at this time. So it says you should. This is their recommendation. You're going to provide all information to patrons, guests, and attendees regarding mask recommendations for all persons, regardless of vaccine status. You're going to provide information to your patron, guests, and attendees to consider better fit and filtration for masks. Again, requiring all patrons to wear masks, especially when the community may be high, or if those being served are at high risk for severe disease or illness. Requiring attendees who do not provide proof of vaccination to enter indoor mega events, which we don't deal with, so that doesn't really apply to us. But it's not mandated that you have to make them do it. This is a suggestion. This thing you should do these things. I just want to clarify that. You're welcome to do it. I'm just saying, it's not saying you have to. It does say no person can be prevented from wearing a mask as a condition of participation in activity or entry into a business. So you cannot legally ask somebody to take their mask off when they come into your business. I don't think most people are doing that, but in case you were, you cannot do that. Okay, so this was a fast one, right? Like it's almost a half hour, and that's the information that I got from Cal OSHA. So for those of you who weren't here in the beginning, Cal OSHA put a PDF out in December 15th, where they were telling us what they were looking at doing, getting rid of the emergency temporary standards, the end of January, that they were going to do these new things, and that they would they would vote and put out the official information by the end of January. They have not done that as of 9:30 this morning. It still says it's coming soon. So I don't have all the details. All I have is the PDF that they originally put out, which is the information that I went over with you now. So if anything changes and I see it, I'm going to be checking that thing like several times a day for the next few days until it actually changes. If anything is different than what I told you guys based on what they told us originally, I will email you all right away and tell you, hey, you need to do something different. As of right now, in summary, you do not have to pay exclusion pay. That ended on January 1st. And you do not have to write a separate standalone COVID prevention plan. You do have to have one in your IPP plan, but you don't have to do it standalone. And you also don't have to report all of your outbreaks to public health. You report any major outbreaks to Cal OSHA. A major outbreak is 20 or more employees within a 14-day period of time. So is there any questions, Linda, that anyone has of stuff I didn't talk about? Oh, quarantine, I forgot. Where's my quarantine?
There's a
already
couple
talked
questions.
about it.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Bring it.
First question is, someone had stated that they heard if you got COVID in December and it concluded in January, you still have to pay, that they heard that. Is that correct?
They had to pay what?
The exclusion pay.
They got COVID at work?
Yes, I assume so, in December, and they weren't recovered until January.
Is it because the payroll was in January? Like the pay period that they were in was in December, but then the pay date was in January?
That would be a good question to
Feel free to
ask.
unmute yourself, whoever asked, and tell me if that's what you're thinking.
Okay.
That was me, Melissa. I read it and I can't remember where I read it, that if their case started in December, but it wasn't resolved into January, you still needed to pay them.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because they still haven't even told us 100% certainty it's being discontinued, even though they told us, but they didn't tell us. I would say yes. I would 100% trust that.
And I had somebody who started December 26th was their case.
No,
So I paid them all the way through.
I would do that as a precaution anyway.
Yeah.
So just because, unfortunately, if you pay the exclusion pay today, even if you were technically required to, you're not going to get the money back. But I don't know. They change stuff. So whatever. It's okay. Any other questions that anybody has?
Yes, was exclusion pay for employers with a certain amount of employees, or was it
Nope.
for all employers?
It was for everybody.
Okay.
The regular paid sick leave that they had done, the COVID special sick leave, that was for, in the beginning, it was for all employees, all employers with over 5 employees when it was federal. And then California changed it to only employers with 26 employees or more. So more than 25 employees. The exclusion, but that was if they got COVID while they're at their grandma's barbecue over the weekend or something like that. But if they've got COVID at work, the exclusion pay has been for all employers, no matter the size, since November of 2020. So that one, and that's not one that a lot of people knew about going into 2021. I didn't realize it till later. So unfortunately.
Another question is, did one of your last slides say a positive person must test negative to come back after day 5 unless waiting in 10 days?
If they want to come back early. So let's go back. So we'll go back. Yeah, here's a slide. This is copied and pasted from the CDPH website. So isolation can end after day 5 if symptoms are not present, so they've gotten better, and a diagnostic specimen test collected on day 5 or after test negative. So they need both. They have to be getting better and they have to test negative to come back earlier than the day 10 quarantine. Otherwise, they can come back on day 11, assuming that they're not, with a crazy high fever or something like that. And they don't have to have a negative test to come back to work if it's after day 10. And their symptoms have improved. Those two things go together.
So someone's asking, can you go over, is that 11P form or the IIP form?
Well, it's not a form. It is a binder. So this is actually the company I would recommend everybody. If you email me, I will email you the link for that. But the name of the company that does a lot of cool stuff is Gamma International Services. I can type it in the chat. International Services. And the IPP plan is what you have in your business for any type of for any type of Cal OSHA. It's a safety manual. Like, what do you do if there's an earthquake? What do you do in the event of a fire? What do you evacuate to? What do you do if when we used to have mercury thermometers, like isoflooring crashes on the ground, what do you do? So it's basically a what do you do when stuff happens in your practice kind of book. And it's an injury and illness prevention plan. And what you do is you take every hospital has different things. Nobody has their same IIPP plan, but I would say veterinary medicine has similar ones. So that's why I recommend this service, Gamma International Services, because they actually do have one specific for vet med. So you can purchase that manual and then create, several pages of documents from that, and then that will cover you.
I think that's it. If I missed anyone, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, shout out if you have any questions. Like, this was so exciting. I mean, because it's not a bunch of new stuff. That's bad. Is there anything? Oh, I see Addie's. How would you handle employees not wearing one? Well, so here's the thing. When you ask, so her question is, how would you handle employees not wanting to wear a mask any longer, but the company policy still wears masks indoors? Can they legally get in trouble for not wearing a mask while working? The thing with this is that they can legally, it's not a legal thing on that end. Are they following the rules that you've set out? If your rule was you don't poke an animal more than 3 times when you're trying blood, and someone's poking the animal 10 times, you would write them up, right? So if you have a policy that says this is what we require you to do, even if they don't agree with it, they still have to follow that policy. So that's when you have your whole writing up process and stuff. Now I understand with the mask thing, because it's so hit or miss with different businesses. There are still hospitals that are having their employees wear masks, and there's quite a few hospitals who are not. So I get that, where that's kind of confusing to the employees. I think with the exclusion pay being removed, once we see that officially on Cal OSHA's site, businesses can feel more comfortable that they're not going to have to pay everybody if there's any exposure at work. And so the fear of that kind of changes a little bit because it's not as expensive. So hopefully moving into there, businesses will feel more comfortable with allowing their employees to take their masks off because they're not wearing their mask anywhere else. So, but as far as the actual ruling, they're not following your protocols and policies. That's what they can be written up for.
I have a question, but I'm driving, so I can't like chat
No
or
worries.
whatever.
Get it out.
Could you briefly go over the difference between exclusion pay and COVID pay? I get a little bit fuzzy sometimes.
Yeah. So the exclusion pay is when an employee is exposed to COVID at work and then they test positive. They contract and it's proven. So you know for sure that say 3 people were working all in the same area and all 3 of them came down with COVID. So you would have to pay the time that the employees need to be off because of, you're going to have to exclude them because they've now tested positive, right? You know for sure they got COVID at work. You now have to pay for them to get home and recover. Now you pay up to the 10 days. And then if they have to stay out longer because they have a problem, they get in the hospital or whatever, then they have to look into regular disability insurance or like paid sick time. The disability time. That changes. So you don't have to pay. If they had to be out for like 30 days because of this, you wouldn't pay all 30 of those days. You would pay the 80-hour thing that the Cal OSHA has on their site. And that's it for exclusion pay. That's when you're required to pay. The paid sick leave, the COVID sick leave pay or whatever, that was if they got sick at grandma's house and they had to stay off work for 10 days, 5 days, whatever, you paid them a sick time, but only if you had more than 25, which obviously you have more than 25 employees. So you paid them the sick time. The actual amount is probably the same. And I don't think you guys were getting credits as of my knowledge in 2021, you didn't. So in a way, it's kind of coming from the same pot on your end, but the difference is the sick pay has a limit. If they got sick in July and they used up all their COVID sick time, which say 80 hours, right? Say they use it all. And then they get sick again in November, they don't get to use it again. Now, if their kid was sick in July and they had to stay home with their kid and they got paid for that, and then they get sick in November, then they would have gotten paid separately for that. So you could get paid twice from the paid sick time, but then once you use up your bank and it's all gone, it's gone. Exclusion pay, if they got exposed multiple times and have to stay home multiple times, you have to pay each time. So that would be, I think, the biggest difference.
So the exclusion pay is not if they've been exposed at work and we have to keep them out for quarantine, because it was that for a little while, right?
Yeah, because you don't have to, yes, correct. Because you do not have to, in fact, actually go to the next one. You do not have to quarantine them just because of exposure any longer. So as of November, you did not have to quarantine them because they were just exposed. So if they test on day 5 and their test is negative, you don't have to pay any exclusion pay because they don't have to stay home, because they're not required just because they were exposed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and we also don't have to make them stay home, right? If they were exposed at work, we don't have to make them stay home and to see if they're sick.
Correct. If they were just exposed.
Right, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Melissa, is the IIPP for hospitals with more than 10 employees?
IIPP
or
is for
more?
all hospitals. A written plan is for more than 10 hospitals. I'm sorry, hospitals with more than 10 employees. Now, here's the thing though. I'm going to be logical. IIP plans are usually several pages. I mean, they're probably like at least 10 pages, right? Because you're going to address the fire, you're going to address flood, you're going to address earthquake, all the safety things you might have, you know, all the stuff that they may be exposed to. You have all this stuff in there. I don't know how any business could just verbally tell all their employees that on day 1. So personally, I don't understand why it's only for 10 or more employees that you have to put it in writing, because I don't think you could verbally communicate that either way. But if you have more than 10 employees, then you have to put your IIPP plan in writing. If you have less than 10 employees, then you don't have to. But I don't know how you could communicate all those things, because unfortunately, a lot of people don't know all the safety issues in vet med. So even though we think they know, they don't. So I think an IIPP plan, although it may be tedious, once you create it, unless you have other things that change, like with COVID, right? So now you have to add that to your IIPP plan. We could never have predicted that there would be a pandemic that would make you have to update that plan. But most of the time, unless you have a big chemical change or you have a new big old product or something that's a safety issue for your employees, your IIPP plan is pretty much going to stay the same. Where it's going to say, who's your safety? You're going to like list out your safety officer is the one that's in charge of your monthly safety meetings. Let's just say that. I would not put the name of your safety officer in your IIPP plan, because then you never have to change it. And then you can just have a list of people and their positions that you put on the wall, and that could change if your safety officer leaves or something like that. So your IIPP plan, you can really just put some effort into doing it one time. And unless you have big changes like COVID or something like that, you won't have to update it again.
All right, can you extrapolate, sorry, I can't talk. If one person comes down with, one employee comes down with COVID and no one else has had it and no one else is getting it, how do you prove that they got it from work? Or
So
do you?
one of the things that you do is in your question asking is, you know, when they say, oh, I think I got COVID, and be like, oh my gosh, what happened? Do you know, like, do you know how you got it? Make it casual when you're talking to them, because they might tell you, you know, that they were, oh yeah, I was at a party, a birthday party for my nephew over the weekend, and now I have a sore throat. So they kind of told you that they were at their sister's house or brother's house or whatever, and that they may not have got it from work. The other thing is, if nobody else at work has got it, that's also kind of like, okay, but here's the kind of catch to that. So so let's say Heidi goes to her nephew's birthday party over the weekend, and on Tuesday morning, she worked all day Monday, Tuesday morning, she's got a scratchy throat and starting to get a fever. She tests positive for COVID. She goes home. She knows that she got it from her nephew's birthday party, right? But then Stephanie, who worked with Heidi all day Monday, she now starts to get a scratchy throat and a fever on Wednesday or Thursday. So you can kind of put that together, that she most likely got it from Heidi. So then Stephanie would be the person that would have potentially contracted it at work, not Heidi, because you know Heidi got it from somewhere else. But based on the rules they've told us, exclusion pay is no longer required. So you don't have to pay them if they stay home because they were excluded from working because they tested positive for COVID because they got it from someone, you know, one of their coworkers. You do have to document it though. The documentation requirement is up to 2025. So you still have to document any cases that you have. Like I would literally just write down anytime someone comes in with COVID, test positive at home, whatever, have a log that you track with everybody's names and all the dates and all of those things. And then if they're actually positive, then you have to, you know, notify the rest of the team who worked with them. You still have to notify them and you still have to report it.
It looks like that's it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys. And hopefully, okay, perfect. So I really hope, as much as I love talking with all of you, I really hope this is the last time that we ever have to have this webinar again about Cal OSHA updates with COVID. And hopefully we never have to do this, but I appreciate you guys coming. I appreciate you guys, you know, being patient for all of these things. So thank you for joining me today. Please follow me on social media. I will post the little selfie picture that we took in the beginning on my Instagram and my business Facebook page. So feel free to follow me at South Coast Vet Solutions. Follow me on YouTube. It's at South Coast Veterinary Manage 263. So
Melissa, real quick, another one just came in that I think I missed earlier. Can you require your employees to wear a mask, but not your clients?
yes. And some hospitals are doing that. And mostly because of the exclusion pay, I think. But yeah, you don't have to require your clients to wear masks if you don't want them to. You can ask them if you're, you know, here's a mask if you'd like to wear one. If they want to wear a mask, they can, but you do not have to force them to if you don't want to. And I know we're doing that already.
Melissa, thank you so much for staying on top of this. We don't know what we would do without you.
Thanks.
Honestly. You're the brave one that
Well,
stays
you
up.
guys don't laugh at me because as much as it's a pain in the ass. Yes, I said ass on the recording. But at the same time, it kind of gives me comfort to find all this information and make sure everybody knows what it is. Because I don't want anyone to be without knowledge. So that's my weird little thing that I do. So I'm glad I could bring Cal OSHA to all of you.
You're the only one that likes it too. So
I know, and I don't want to ever be inspected. I really don't. I never want to go through a Cal OSHA inspection. So thankfully, my business doesn't have any employees, so I'm okay for me personally. Any other questions? Anything else? You guys feel free to shout out if you don't want to put in the chat. Otherwise, I will email this to you guys. I'm going to send the recording of the Zoom to get closed caption on it. So that usually takes like 24 hours. So once I get that back, I will email all of you my Zoom recording. So anyone who had to leave early or whatever, not that they can hear me if they left early, but And if you want to play it for somebody else, I'll send you a copy of my slides. And every single thing pretty much from here came from either Cal OSHA or CDPH. I did not make up any of the information on my own. So those resources. I'm going to do something really quick. I'm going to stop my share really quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the website right now. And we're going to get a literally like updated. Okay, here we go back to the share. I'm going to share it again. And you guys can see as of 10:44 today, it still says coming soon. So there was no changes during my presentation. So whatever. I get frustrated with us always having to follow these rules immediately, and then the government doesn't put the stuff there that we need to follow them. So it just drives me crazy. Sorry. Anyway. All right. If there's no other questions, thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time and taking the time out of your day to listen and learn about the funnest topic in the world. And those of you who this is your 4th meeting with me, thanks for coming back. I appreciate that. So everyone have a great rest of your day. And I hope that COVID doesn't cause you lots of problems in the future. All right.
Thanks, Mel.